To pray, there's no angels where I go, only pieces that are broken, scattered dreams across the floor. I'm home.
Alrighty, hello everybody, this is Kirusho here. Now, whenever we last left off, we had just gotten done with the stain attack, and we were heading into the final exams. So, let us begin. Now, as I did mention before, I believe, Ida was injured, and Deku and Todoroki are given credit for the capture of this vigilante, nicknamed the Hero Killer, since he is trying to, in the words of the press, capture All Might's image, doing so and failing in the worst way possible. Now, along with that, this is whenever there would be the final exams at school the next week. Everyone training hard and actually getting a bit better. And, well, yeah, doing what they need to do before this time. As whenever it does roll around, it is announced that Midoriya and Baku will be on a team, and that they will be going up against All Might. Everyone actually freaking out a bit while Midoriya and Baku are actually amped up. Now, they would go get changed in their hero costumes, and get things ready. Now, after changing, the two would be arguing about a tactic. Baku wants to stay and fight All Might, while Midoriya is just thinking that they can get around him, if they need to. He does know that battling All Might is going to be part of this, but those weights are going to slow him down a bit. Then again, a rematch against All Might, that does get his blood pumping, his heart racing. Now, Midoriya, he's just thinking, more and more. All Might said that he is stronger, and well, he's gotten weaker, right? The more I gain control over One For All, the weaker he gets. That means I might have an actual chance of beating him. Now, with that thought crossing Midoriya's mind, it would be announced that they are beginning. Bakugo immediately running in, as so does Midoriya. The two arguing more, and Bakugo telling him to just stay out of his way, as All Might would send 100% flying directly at them. Well, 100% of his current power, which is 70% of One For All. Now, with that being said, Midoriya would have thrown up his hand, throwing his arm backwards. Basically, hold your hand directly up and swing it backwards and then cut upwards into the air. Basically, he would use that and create his own shockwave, cutting All Might in two. As Bakugo just stared back at Midoriya, watching him with his hand up, telling him that he really didn't need to do that. Midoriya clarifying that he did right before All Might rushed in, smashing Bakugo directly in the chest with a fist, as he would have ran over to Midoriya and begin to try and attack him. As soon as that does happen, Midoriya would have just thrown out Black Whip, and begin to try and use it a different way. He brings back Black Whip up and covers his entire arm, All Might smashing into it and immediately just sending him flying. Midoriya going through a couple buildings while Bakugo gets back up, blasting in and trying to hit All Might. All Might just grabbing him by his arm as Bakugo begins to send explosions directly point blank into his face, over and over and over again, bringing up his other arm and trying to blast more. All Might just grabbing this. Now, after All Might grabs onto Bakugo's arm, this is whenever Bakugo would try and blast more explosions. Except this time his left hand begins to heat up, and it begins to pop in one specific place, his palm, before a large burst does come out. Midoriya running back in, and seeing this happen. As whenever he does run in, he immediately just comes in, coming upwards towards All Might's right arm, and jabs directly up, being able to make All Might let go of Bakugo, as he does try and throw a couple punches into his back and around his sides. All Might not allowing this, being able to just simply kick Midoriya away. Watching as Midoriya gets sent flying through more buildings as he actually does toss Bakugo his own direction. And he gets sent flying. Bakugo trying to recover in midair and blast back in. Midoriya rushing on his own and immediately just throwing up Black Whip with his left hand, wrapping up All Might as he actually just closes his hand and begin to twist, beginning to pull with his other hand. All Might going to bring up his own to just start ripping away at Black Whip. Bakugo coming in and blasting at him. Blasting him in his back, into his face, and actually beginning to use his AP shots. His more and more advanced techniques he begins to use, since he's had to at least try and think about these. And he would begin, more and more and more. Deku rushing back in as he just sock All Might directly in the face. All Might grabbing him by his leg and swinging him around, smashing him directly into Bakugo. As he would just tell them that you do understand the purpose of this exercise was to see your teamwork. In fact, you two were paired up specifically because you have issues and do not work very well together. Now would be the perfect time to solve them. Deku just telling All Might that he doesn't need Bakugo's help. Getting back on his feet. Bakugo getting back up on his, saying for once he agrees with the fucking shitty nerd. Deku just looking at Bakugo and saying he's not a nerd. In fact, if I do remember, the gap keeps widening between us, doesn't it? Bakugo just looking at Midoriya, a bit annoyed, before he himself does rush back in and go to attack All Might. Midoriya staying behind and immediately just bringing both of his hands up and piecing together what Bakugo is about to do. Black Whip lashing out as All Might goes to bring his hand in to grab Bakugo. Black Whip wrapping around his right forearm and pulling outwards. Bakugo seeing that happen as All Might would bring his left hand up and go to smash Bakugo in his side. Bakugo blasting to his left and dodging it, as he just throw up his hand and immediately go to pull his gauntlet, pulling the pin and sending it loose. All Might being blasted with this large explosion, as Midoriya himself would pull, yanking All Might and slamming him to the left through a building, as he just begins to hold on to Black Whip more and starts spinning All Might around. Bakugo actually in shock as he does turn around to see what Midoriya is doing. Bakugo watches Midoriya completely encase All Might a bit in Black Whip. It's at least got a very good hold on him as he just begins to slam him through more and more buildings, swinging him around, before he actually does feel something happen. Black Whip suddenly stops, and he begins to get pulled himself, beginning to just wrap it around his own arms and begin to pull. Him losing his footing as All Might would rush in, and he would be pulled forward, kicking him directly in the chest, getting sent flying upwards into a building. And Bakugo would rush towards him, firing off AP shots. All Might bringing his hands up to block as Bakugo would be directly in front of All Might, going to throw a punch before he just gets hit directly in his hand. All Might shattering his right gauntlets, and Bakugo breaking one of his knuckles, or at least parts of them, a part of his hand. All Might's just watching as Midoriya does rush back in, immediately grabbing him by his back as he actually does begin to do one thing. He tries to grapple All Might and hold his arm, his right one. All Might confused just begins to do one thing, smashing Midoriya across Bakugo's face, as he just begins to grab onto him, trying to pull him off, being able to actually just tear away at his shirt before he does just slam him against the wall, and begin to pile drive him through multiple buildings with his arm, just running through them, before he finally does just swing it outwards and Midoriya gets loose, him throwing out Black Whip and pulling as hard as he can. All Might actually feeling this and getting yanked forwards. People are actually surprised. All Might's strength and stamina are beginning to get lower and lower, Along with that, he was already having trouble since this seems like it's already a fair fight. Along with the inclusion of Bakugo, that's not very good. Midoriya at 60%, while All Might is actually using 70%. People watching as All Might gets yanked forwards, and Midoriya would immediately bring up his other hand and begin to pull All Might as hard as he can. As he comes in and kicks him directly in the chest with his feet. And All Might would just bring his head down, going to smash Midoriya in his body, sending him into the ground. As soon as he does that, Midoriya would have fallen onto the ground, and he would begin to cough a bit of blood. All Might telling him that he is not winning enough fights, and that he should just give up. In fact, I am only going at about 20%. Him somewhat at least laughing a bit. Deku knows that's a lie, but everyone else knows, or at least thinks that that's true. If he does at least call him out on that, then that means that people get suspicious. Deku just getting back up, bloody and injured, feeling a few of his ribs cracked, telling All Might that that does not matter. In fact, Midoriya just looking up, and his eyes beginning to course with more electricity. Midoriya pushing himself up to 70, saying All Might that that's perfectly fine. As he does just rush forwards, disappearing from everyone's point of view. And All Might does actually just bring his hands up, trying to look around and see where Midoriya is. As a building crumbles behind him turning expecting to see Midoriya, but seeing nothing there. And then hearing more begin to disappear around him. More and more being destroyed, before Midoriya finally does rush in. All Might seeing Midoriya as he does slam his hands over his head, smashing a building directly onto All Might. Bakugo watching and somewhat in shock. Him still on the ground. Midoriya looking his way and confused, throwing out his hand and pulling him towards him with Black Whip. Before he does just hold him by his shirt, and the two are falling, telling him why isn't he attacking? Come on! We can take him! Midoriya annoyed, slapping Bakugo across the face, saying that he always had confidence. He always had that arrogance. Where is it? You said that you were going to be stronger than All Might. You were going to be stronger than anyone. So prove it. You wanted to fight him. Now's your chance. Midoriya annoyed, telling Bakugo to use his other gauntlet, tossing them directly towards All Might. Now, All Might would have gotten up from the rubble. Bakugo flying in as he actually just throw out his left arm and go for the pin. All Might rushing in and immediately throwing out his hand. Right before he can meet Bakugo or even make contact with him, Midoriya would have come in, slamming directly on All Might's back as he would just push him directly back into the ground. And Bakugo would let off the other explosion. As whenever that does happen, Midoriya begins to look around, throwing his hands outwards and grabbing and wrapping around other pieces of rubble, as he directly stands right in front of All Might and throws his hands out forwards, crossing them, before turning them around and slamming his hands together, closing them. All Might getting back up as he just begins to get berated with rubble from each side, and it just begins to drive into his body, not puncturing his skin, but he can feel the metal hitting him, like bullets ricocheting off of Superman. You can still at least feel that shit. As he would just be able to just punch out his left arm and begin to start punching at them. The smaller pieces begin to hit him. As Baku just runs forwards and begins to let out these concentrated explosions he has directly at All Might, into his back. All Might turning around before Midoriya rushes in and pile drives both of his fists directly into his back, as hard as he can, sending All Might flying, before grabbing him by his legs with Black Whip and yanking him back in, and socking him directly across his face with a hard punch. People actually watching that as Midoriya just throws his hands again, grabbing All Might, meaning to swing him around in the air, before sending him flying, telling Baku that they need to go now, panting heavily. Bakugo actually holding onto one of his arms as they begin to run off. Deku actually surprised that Bakugo didn't really even try to argue with him before they would get directly in front of the exit, and All Might would appear. Deku seeing him in his vision as he was about to cross the line. All Might sending a punch directly into Deku's gut, sending him flying. As for Bakugo, he would have grabbed him by his face and thrown him through a couple buildings. All Might actually painting heavily, as his sleeves, along with the top portion of his outfit, is a bit burned, and at least messed up. You can clearly see that there are cuts and holes in it. Although, All Might is at least saying that they have done very well, and that this fight has actually been providing him some useful information. Saying that Midoriya doesn't really seem to use those martial arts tactics a lot during an intense fight, while Bakugo's headstrong persona, or well, attitude, begins to disappear. It is quite, well, interesting to see in action. Deku getting back up, and actually popping his knuckles, telling All Might that if he wants to see him use his martial arts, all he had to do was ask. Bakugo getting back up too, but he's in relatively worse shape. Him not really able to stand, walking forwards and at least trying to blast in with one of his arms, throwing it outwards and beginning to try and blast into All Might. All Might just grabbing him by his wrist as Bakugo just keeps blasting away, using above USJ level explosions. Or Sports Festival level, my bad. Now, he just begins to blast in these more and more and more until he just begins to scream. And his hand just falls limp. All Might just letting go of it as he does rushing for Midoriya. Midoriya getting ready. He needs to time this perfectly, as he just begins to throw himself back and forth. All Might watching as Midoriya does rush to the left, then step off to the right and move forwards. Him doing this over and over and over again. All Might just watching him do this until Midoriya be directly in front of him. All Might going to throw out his own counter punch to hit Midoriya. Midoriya actually just shifting his body weight completely to the right as he sends out a large punch directly at All Might, with all of his body weight. Actually jumping off of his left leg and doing so, beginning by doing it again with his right leg, over and over and over again. People actually watching the shockwaves thrown off of this guy. As Midoriya would have done one thing. After a heavy uppercut to All Might, he would have just thrown out his hands, covering them in black whip and beginning. People just watching as he basically just forms gauntlets. And jumps upwards as high as he can. And gets directly above All Might, throwing his hands upwards a black whip as he creates just a giant thing. It's not really sure what it is. However, this can be best described as, what is it? Imagine a giant mallet. But it's not a mallet. It's basically just, well, a giant thing of darkness. That's the best I can attribute it to. It's basically just like a giant flat plate that Midoriya would just be able to smash directly into All Might. It shattering upon impact, as he would just look down, throwing his hands outwards and trying to pull All Might in. People a bit surprised. They're having an aerial battle, but neither one of them can fly. As they begin to hear the shockwaves just bounce around the room. If you would look outside, you can clearly see these actually just jumping off these people, as these All Might and Midoriya just be colliding with fists over and over and over again. Kendo, Ojo, and most of Class 1A actually surprised, as Midoriya, with the next punch, would have been sent flying, trying to recover as he would immediately do so, throwing his hands out and snapping, and being sent flying back towards All Might. The two colliding with the next fist as All Might would just grab it, and directly just start throwing Midoriya down toward the earth. People actually watching as Midoriya just sits flying, landing directly in the center of town. Him getting back up, and just looking upwards towards All Might, who is falling. before he would just charge up and jump up. Again, people watching the bases starts rushing in. He throws his arms out forwards, as if he was flying like Superman. All Might watching this, as Midoriya does throw himself out faster, as he just turns one for all on his leg and at least wiggles his toes, blasting at 100% forwards, his shoes breaking. All Might confuses himself Midoriya for 1 minute, then he disappeared. As Midoriya is directly behind All Might at least turns to see this as he goes to block his punch. Kinda confused. He blocked his punch, but the boy is upside down. Midoriya throwing his left leg downwards as much as he can and smashing it directly in the top of All Might's skull, right in between his hair that's standing up. And All Might would have been sent flying down towards Earth. Midoriya basically just waiting for himself to fall. As he's not falling, kinda confused, bringing his hands up and just looking at himself. Before he does just fall again. What was that? Can I? Midoriya trying to think about that, but there's no time. Charging up one for all at 100% in his left arm, as All Might would smash into the ground and go to stand back up. Everyone watching as he would stand back up and rush upwards again. All Might and Deku meeting with a fist. Although Midoriya is 100% against All Might's 70, yeah, that's not going to end well. Midoriya being able to punch directly in All Might's hand as it would break, and Midoriya would just continue on. The entire force of the punch going upwards in All Might's arm, and breaking his left one. As Midoriya would at least somewhat just, scream, and throw out his right arm as much as he can, throwing it outwards and smashing him across the face with another 100%. All Might being sent flying as he's fractured a lot of his skull. And, yeah, that was not good. As All Might would have been sent smashing through the tallest building in the entire area, and it would just collapse on top of him. Now, as soon as that does happen, Midoriya at least tries to move. He broke a couple of his toes. At least he didn't break his whole foot. Actually, just looking around, seeing the building Bakugo is, nearby, and at least just trying to use Black Whip. It actually coming out above his shoulder and immediately grabbing onto Bakugo. Deku just using Black Whip and going upwards into the air, beginning to move somewhat like Dr. Octopus, picking up Bakugo immediately and the two just walking out, or at least being carried by this new creation he can do. As Recover Girl would have talked with Midoriya, telling him that was very reckless again, and if he keeps doing this, then she is not going to be healing him. Midoriya just explained that he kinda doesn't really, need to worry about that. He does still have that, thing his friends gave him. Her actually beginning to ask him a question about that. After healing Bakugo and him being passed out, he just needs to get some rest, then he'll be perfectly fine. Although she does want to know what this strange liquid is, since, it's kind of going against everything she knows about quirks. Deku just explaining that his friend never really told him what it was, just exactly how it could help him. Although he does know at least some ingredients in it. Her asking what they are. Him making up a bit of science, or at least something that she couldn't understand. Basically just attributed to complete gibberish. And she would at least have to believe it. Along with him healing his own arms with this strange liquid, and then her asking the question as to why he didn't do that for All Might. Him explaining that it can't regenerate organs. Although Recover Girl does at least want to perform a test real quick, and see exactly what this strange thing can do to Deku. If it can't regenerate organs, can it regenerate the fractures in the bone if it was broken? Her performing these x-rays and at least telling Midoriya that she'll get back to him with this information. Since during the sports festival his skin did heal also. Now, with that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed the video, and have an amazing day. I'll catch you guys in the next part.